This is Laura, aka the Sound Sommelier, talking with the lovely Mika. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. It's been a long time coming. Mika, what's your earliest memory of hip hop?
Okay, earliest memory. I was trying to, so I would say it was when my sister used to play hip hop off of her little boom box. It was not a little boom box. It was actually quite a big boom box. And
Mm,
she had some type, I don't know what mix it was or whatever mixtape she was playing at the moment, but it had like Tribe on it and like um Black Sheep and like all these, really good 90s hip hop
hmm
artists. So like from what I can remember is that type of music. And I remember actually buying my sister my first like the first CD I've ever bought was for my sister, and I like saved up all my money so I could
Oh,
get it for her. And I was like, please get it. And I was like, it was Black Sheep, and it was the first time the parental advisory stickers were on there. So when I
nice.
went to buy it, I was really young, and like my dad was there, and like he had no idea what was happening. And I was like, I need to buy this for my sister. And he was like, okay, okay, you go. And so the cashier was like, you need an adult. And I was like pointing at him, and he's like, yeah, yeah, that's just do it. So yeah, that
Amazing.
was my first memory of hip hop.
That's amazing. I gotta make sure Dre sees this.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
she would die. Oh my God. She would freak out. That's like to this day still her favorite
nice.
ever.
What kind of music do you recall playing in your house growing up, or when you were
Ooh.
younger?
So I had this, the first thing was Bob Marley. My dad was really into Bob Marley. So I used to listen to Bob Marley all the fucking time. And that was like my shit. And then it turned into Wu-Tang, Onyx, uh, Black Sheep, obviously. I was into like, then I went into like the whole rock kind of scene, which is different. So I was like in Nirvana and like
Right.
all that type of music because the 90s were good for like
A lot of.
everything.
Hmm
So I was like, all over the place, but like I had a really big thing for Onyx and Wu-Tang. And like, those are
I
like the
remember when
two.
Slam came out, the video. I remember that.
I swore I could be in that fucking video. I was like, I could, ah! And like me and my best friend would sit there and we'd pick, who we'd want to be. And we'd be like, all right, let's go. There's a video she showed me. And I was like, oh,
Of you
I
guys
wasn't
dancing.
actually, oh my God, I just had to stop right there because it was mortifying. And I'm really happy that I'm really happy that nobody's seen that, and I wasn't
Social media
all the
wasn't
way in
around
the.
then. Mhm.
No, it's a cassette. It's a. I don't even know what you. Yeah, it's bad, but funny to watch. It was a good time. But yeah, that was what I was into
Nice.
back then.
Kind of in the same vein, do you remember having favorite artists and acts? Would you say that that was pretty much it, like Wu Tang and Onyx and Black Sheep, or did you have others that really kind of influenced you?
I mean, I think that whole like anyone that really came out in the 90s at that point was sort of influential to me, and like. And then as it turned into like, 90s into like the early 2000s, like, then it got into what I started getting into oddly like really indie hip hop music.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really into like Cannibal Ox. Like I would say that Cannibal Ox was kind of like my breaking
Mm-hmm.
point. Like that was like I loved hip hop, but when I heard them, that shit changed me. And that shit was, and it, I always say, like, there's one thing from, like, my ex from, like, college. The only good thing he ever gave me was Cannibal Ox. And I was like, oh my God. And it kind of, like, that really kind of started my career after I, like, really started
Nice.
listening to them. So, yeah, it was dope. And so I guess, like, Cannibal Ox, Aesop Rock, like a lot of the Def Jux artists, if people
Hmm.
remember what Def Jux was, and like that whole thing. It was pretty dope.
Yeah, the Cold Vein was one of my favorites too.
Oh my God, so good. Even like nonfiction's album was amazing. Like that whole scene was mind blowing. Like Big L, like all these people that I was like, wait, they're not on TV. Like MF Doom, like
Uh-huh.
just finding those types of artists was I was like, where, how, what, why was, how do I even, you
Yeah.
know? I didn't even understand. I didn't know how to like comprehend like that music until
Hmm.
I really immersed myself into it. But yeah,
It's also
that
amazing
was
that we were exposed to that kind of stuff back then before social media and not everyone kind of like sharing everything that they love that way. So it kind of had to be all word of mouth or
yep.
because those people
Or
weren't
so
on
like a
MTV.
or like yeah, or there's a DJ. Some DJ is like playing some shit, and I was very lucky to have so many fucking DJs, so many DJ friends. So it was
Nice.
like I was constantly being sent music or mixtapes. Everyone made mixtapes.
So when did you realize you wanted to pursue a career in the music industry?
Ooh. Um, I actually, I actually really, what did I do? I was like the whole mixtape era was really important to me when I was
Mhm.
younger. And like to me, making one for someone was really like it meant something. You know, like
Mhm.
that was a big deal. Like I took the time to sit there and make a mixtape for you and like the intricacies of what goes into it. And so I guess back in the day, I never really thought about that and how important that was to me.
Mhm.
And as I was getting older, probably like high school, going into college, I was like, I think I loved music, and I was like, I don't know what I could do in music that would make my parents happy,
Right.
and none of that will. So I was like, I gotta do something. So I ended up, taking broadcasting in college, and like as I was there, I was like, I don't really want to do TV. I don't want to do like shit like that. I was like, I really, really want to do like radio. Radio sounds cool because it's like,
Mhm.
oh, no one sees my face. I could just hide for a long time and I get to listen to dope music. And so
Mhm.
when I got to college, I kind of really focused and like did all the radio stuff that I could. I did engineering. Like it was intense
Nice.
and I just like immersed myself in there and I was like, I'm gonna work in music for the rest of my life. And I have at
You're
least
making it
until
happen.
now. Yes, which is amazing. Everyone was like, "Oh, you don't actually do what you do when you graduate." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's most people." But I know that I can't do anything else. Like, not that I can't, I just don't want to. And like,
Mhm.
so, I left
Get
that.
the mentality. That's great. And then kind
Yep.
of this good segue. So you've got quite the impressive resume with past roles at Def Jux, Fool's Gold, Fat Beats. To what do you attribute your success working with those well-known labels?
Shit, I worked hard. I fucking put, I did so much work, free work, a lot
Hmm.
of free work, a lot of cheap work, and I did everything. Like I never said no. And I mean, that was probably, I mean, that's probably not the best, but it was also something that you had to do. Like back when we didn't have the internet and stuff like that, like we couldn't get in contact with anybody. Like you had to go to these events or you had to actually be, like you had to know someone to get into these things. And, it was a harder time when you were trying to make it because no one knew who you were and no one cared about who you were. So, it was like being part of those labels and the, you know, labels and whatever they are. Other places that I work, all the music shit that I've done. It really like it just kind of people started to know who I was. And I think
Hmm.
that was the biggest part was like trying to figure out like who was going to remember who the fuck I was. And I was like, how am I differentiating myself? So as I was working, I was learning. And like in the beginning, I was definitely like nervous. I didn't talk very much. I was like, it was a bunch of men. Like running around and like, you know, how like I'm a little Asian girl and I'm like, I love hip hop. Like everyone like, who the fuck are you? And I'm like, yo, I'm nobody right now, but I'm here, like let's be friends. And you know, eventually it kind of like people started being like, wow, this chick is really everywhere. Like, what the fuck is her deal? And as
Mhm.
I met everyone, it just kind of like, so having the resume kind of just helped me move on to like better things. So as I started from Def Jux, then I went to Fatties. I was at Power 105. I was, you know, so like all these things was like, oh, well, you used to work here. Oh, you understand this type of music. Like, oh,
Right.
you don't only listen to mainstream, you also understand like indie hip hop and all that shit. So like it kind of just gave me the knowledge to really like move forward in my career. So it was cool. It was really dope.
Nice. So how did your role as a social media manager at the Combat Jack show come about?
Oh my God. So this is really random. This is the most ridiculous story. Me and A King, you know A King, right?
Mhm.
Have you ever met it? So yeah, so this is this is our story. I was working at Power 105 at the time, and I was really good friends with one of the IT people there.
Okay.
And I was like, you know, I gotta get a full-time job. Like, you know, I'm doing Power, I'm like working at Fat Beats, and like it's just a lot for me. And like I really want to get into like real radio. Like I want to just work at the radio station, not doing the street team shit that I was doing. So I was like, hmm. And so my friend was like, oh, I have a cousin. He works at this place called PNC Radio. And I was like, PNC Radio? I was like, yeah, I know what the fuck that is. He's like, yeah, but
Uh-huh.
you know, I have somebody, I'll connect you guys. And I was like, yo, that would be really dope. Okay, so then I finally send, you know, there's a whole email chain. It's me, him, and A King. And like, you know, it's like, oh, you know, this and that. King's like, yeah, nice to meet you. You know, I'll hit you or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. Um, Months later, I've never heard back from King. And I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, this dude doesn't give a fuck and I want to work there and I don't understand.
You had like put all
And
your eggs in one basket by that point. You're like,
yeah,
I'm going to.
exactly. So, you know, I was like, I was so close to like doing something. I was like, I gotta. So one year, randomly, like, so this is years later, probably like 2 years later, 2 years later, I'm at A3C for the first time and I see A King. Um, and my boyfriend at the time actually knew who knows A King or whatever. So he was like, "Oh, King, what's up?" And when he did that, he was like, "Oh, this is, you know, my girl, blah blah blah. I think she knows your cousin." And he was like, "What?" And so we had this whole ass conversation, and that was when we actually started our conversations about me coming onto the team because they were trying
Mhm.
to, you know, expand. They had a few people on there, but like, you know, the more the merrier, why not? And they had me come in for an interview, and it was completely intimidating because they were filming me.
Oh,
Um, like,
okay.
um, so yeah, it was first I got into who is it? It was Jonathan Mena and A King, and then the rest of the team. There was like there was like four or five other people, and Pete was there. Like everyone was just
Oh.
there, and like there was a
Mhm.
camera, and then Reggie comes out of the fucking room, and I'm like, oh God, and he like sits in front of me, and he's like, so you want to be part of the team? And I was like, yes. And he's like, why? And like the camera's on me, and I'm just like, but I, you know, I sucked that shit up, and I
Mhm.
held myself down. I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I have a lot of experience doing shit, and I would probably be amazing at this job. And they were like, yeah, you're good. Well, the team, let's go. And that was the
Oh,
end of it. It was pretty simple. It was, it was we were also a little bit drunk, so it helped
and that helps.
just a little bit. Yeah, you know. But it was fun. It was a good time.
Nice. So what was it like working with Reggie?
Oh my God. He was everything you probably thought or think he was. Like he is exactly the same person on and off. Like there's no change at all. Like he is always asking questions. He's always really in tune with people, always like trying to like I don't even know, like he listened to so many different people and he did so many like really good-hearted things, and it was just really crazy to see it in action because you hear someone that's on like a podcast or whatever, and he's talking to celebrities and he's like all in depth, like asking these questions, really in tune with them, and you think, oh, after that, like, oh, he's not going to be interested in like, I'm just in the room like doing like shit work. He's not going to come in there and be like, oh, so I want to know about you and this and that, and like, he didn't do that with a lot of people, like, but he connected with us when he didn't have to connect with us on that level. Like, King and Mena were kind of just like, like our managers, so like they were the ones telling us what to do and this and that. But like Reggie would always come in and make sure that we were taken care of, that like none of us were, whatever. And like he brought us to like different parties and like events, and like he was always so open, like he wasn't trying to be like, oh, you guys can't go anywhere because you're not like nobody knows who the fuck you are. So it was really cool to have that.
Nice. We miss him a lot.
Yeah.
So you helped shift the programming at Fuse Media to focus more on hip hop culture. Can you share any stories about the methods that you used to ensure that the content shared on the network was relevant to hip hop culture?
Yeah, definitely. So Fuse is probably known more for like their rock music.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people had no idea that at some point they decided to switch it up, and they really didn't have any rock music anymore. Like they hardly had music on anyway. But for the most part, it was like they switched to kind of a rhythmic sound, but they also had another network, which was just music videos. So I was kind of in charge of that. Well, both, but like it was called FM, Fuse FM, and I basically just put in whatever I wanted hip hop wise. So like, things are getting delivered. So obviously like you had to go through the delivery process and all that stuff, and like, it had to be censored, and there was a lot of, regulations that you have to adhere by when you're doing like television and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, like I was making sure that I was reaching out to, indie labels or, reps that I knew that were, managing artists that I was really into. So like I was getting more indie artists like on there. Like I think I was probably one of the first people to put Benny on to the TV. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
pushing for, like I love Benny. He was my boy. Like love him. So I was like, yo, we got to put this dude in. And everyone's like, I don't know who this guy is. And I was like, y'all don't know now, but you're gonna fucking know later. I was like, this shit's gonna blow up. And like, so when I have a fit, like when I feel it, like I try to push as much as I can. And because of my background, and like I also was working at Music Choice before that, like the people knew who I was working with. They understood that I was like coming from a place where they're like, oh, you're respected in the industry for what you do. So they kind of gave me full reign as to like what to do with the programming. Like they would tell me like, oh, we should do this, we should do that, but for the most part, like it was it was me like programming things that I enjoyed listening to, and like something like I would watch that station only because that was the music I liked to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Fair.
mm,
Um, Speaking of Music Choice, what kind of obstacles did you face when launching Music Choice's first 24/7 interactive network?
oh my God, that was probably the most irritating thing ever.
But worth
It
it?
it was dope. It like everything that I've learned, like using all the programs that I need to use to program, like
Mm-hmm.
G Selector and Music Master. Those are like the two bigger ones. They like I know like I know those very well because I had to create it. Like I had to create the times and the and like where everything is, the breaks and the advertisements, and then like I'd have to go to another system and like figure out where to place all the advertising. So like I was going in and creating these like different logs, and like I had to program on top of that. So it wasn't only just like, oh, this is a show. I'm putting every element that was in it. And because it was an interactive show, I had no idea what was going to be played. So the it was tricky because it was like you're giving three options for each video. So like
Mhm.
they have to there's like so a video would be coming up, and then on the bottom you would see like you know three different video thumbnails, and like you get to vote and you can see the numbers on there. So people are tweeting or whatever the fuck they're
Mhm.
doing, trying to get in, and you're seeing and you're just like, huh. So as a programmer, I think the hardest part is like, well, what three videos do I do right now? Like so
Right.
it was always like doing like a mix of them, making sure that there was a female in there. So there was a lot of rules that I had to figure out in order to make it happen. And then of course, it was the testing, like all the testing that you had to do with the engineers. And engineers, they don't speak English. They speak English. They don't speak my English. Like I don't
Yeah,
know
no.
what they're saying. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? What do you mean? Like,
Mhm.
wait, can you just say this in layman terms? Like, why does this not work? I just want to know. So there was a lot of like nights of working. Like I think I was working at least 6 days a week until 9 p.m. every day, like just trying to get everything done. And then on top of that, doing what I was already doing. So like I couldn't even stop like programming because I still had to so it was just like I was doing two different jobs. And at the time, I was the only person on the team. So it was just me. So I was working with everyone across like all teams. I was in every meeting. So like trying to work, trying to, test, and then trying to have meetings with everybody. It was a lot of work. It was crazy, but it was a learning experience that I love. So
Nice.